20 CIA spies disappeared in China. Let's watch.
The CIA took decades to build a spy network deep inside China. Then, in the space of just 2 years, 20 of their informants disappeared. It was one of the worst intelligence failures in history, involving secret chat websites, a potential mole.
It's always double agent. In fact, just recently I think CIA published a couple of interesting videos on the Chinese social media.
And a whole lot of incompetence. And today, I'm going to show it all to you.
The Chinese government has systematically identified, captured, and killed up to 20 informants working for the CIA.
Our covert assets are the most precious asset any CIA officer has.
We had 20 U.S.-related spies and operatives in China that are no longer to be heard from. They're either dead or in prison. China took care of business.
It's 2006, 4 years before the China incident, and a private contractor named John Reedy is working deep inside one of the CIA's most secretive branches. Reedy is in charge of locating informants and setting up communications with them. His specialty is the Middle East, specifically Iran. But one day he notices something strange. I want you to take a look at this document that Reedy filed. Now, it's top secret, so a lot of this has been redacted, but there's enough in here for us to make sense of what he was trying to claim. As our efforts increased, we started to notice anomalies in our operations and conflicting intelligence reporting that indicated that several of our operations had been compromised. The indicators ranged from to sources abruptly and without reason, ceasing all communications with us. Years before the China network collapsed, Reedy was seeing the exact same pattern. Informants abruptly ceasing communication with them, mysteriously disappearing. Their information tap was shutting off midstream. And now, I want to show you what went wrong. Look at this website. Whilst most of us can't understand what it says, it's in Persian, you would probably say
A lot of Chinese spies getting caught in US right now too. It is insane.
from looking at it, it looks like an ordinary soccer fan website. It's not. This is the communication tool the CIA used to speak with informants in Iran. This website was hiding in plain sight on the internet for anyone to see. It's been shut down now, but I could still access it using the Wayback Machine. Now, if you look closely down here, there is a search bar. And this is where it gets interesting. If we reveal the source code on the website, which you can do with 2 clicks, the label on the search box is password. So now, through some deep investigation, we know that this search box is not really a search box, it's actually a password login. And if you enter the correct password, a second pop-up and second login is triggered. If you enter the right password there.
I thought this is why we have Tor, so people who are authoritative regimes, they can communicate with CIA and other organizations, other agencies.
A secret message box appears where you, as an informant, can share your intel with the CIA and receive intel back. Believe it or not, this basic messaging website became incredibly popular within the CIA when John Reedy was working there. At first, it was only used for communicating with sources in hostile areas, like war zones, where it was too dangerous to meet in person. But as it was so convenient to use, it spread way further than that. Hundreds and hundreds of clones were produced and given to informants all around the world. Each site was built for a single person to limit the exposure if that informant was caught by an enemy government. Here's one designed as a Johnny Carson fan website, a photography website, and one for video games. But sometime in 2009, Iran finds a website exactly like this one. Sources believe that a double agent led them there. And once they had access, they start to dig, using Google of all things. Iran notices that these websites have specific digital fingerprints. They're little bits of code.
It's definitely not Iran. It's probably Russia helping them. In fact, even with Stuxnet, the virus that destroyed their centrifuges, it wasn't Iran who caught it. It was Russia. It was the Russian hackers who noticed something, and they've been consulting with Iran for a long time.
That made them similar to each other. So they plugged these unique fingerprints into Google search using some advanced search queries, and boom, just like that, they find other versions of these websites. The exact same functionality, just a different bad design on top. Seriously, I know this was 2009, but the terrible web design on these sites is a crime in itself that someone should be punished for. Anyway, once Iran pieces together a catalog of these ugly websites, they watch them. They watch the traffic, they watch the IPs, the locations, to see who would show up. Those that did were caught red-handed working for the CIA. And that's how the spy network in Iran started to unravel, site by site, visit by visit. It's shocking how simple it all was. But John Reedy sees this vulnerability even before Iran does. And he sounds the alarm. I personally crafted several cables detailing the threat we discovered. I provided at least 25 recommendations that we had to impose immediately. But inside the agency, they didn't want to hear it. They did not want to admit the obvious because it was their funding, their platforms, their officers, and their unwillingness to change course that led to future compromises. In 2008, Reedy was notified by his government managers that they wanted to take on new responsibilities, requiring a change to his contract. He asked to be assigned to another account, but was denied. And 3 months later, he's informed they will not be renewing his contract. And when he's fired, there are still hundreds of these websites operating around the world. They're like,
I don't understand why they wouldn't take his recommendations. I feel like there's probably something missing. Because if he's saying, hey, your spies could be caught, I feel like even the dumbest officer would listen to that. Would he not? Like, I don't understand how that would affect their funding. I'm dumb. He explained it, I just didn't understand it properly. So this John Reedy guy worked for a contractor who did a lot of work for CIA. In fact, it was this contracting company that actually built all these websites. So when John Reedy actually found out the problems with the websites and how it could expose all the operatives CIA had, he told to the contractor, but the contractor did not want to go to the CIA and admit their mistakes because they could lose billions in dollars. And that's why CIA never fixed it. I think because of this politics stuff, no CIA officer actually learned about this. That's just my understanding from researching this for the last few minutes because I wasn't understanding it properly. But that's not treason, but I would say this is pretty close, like where they risked a lot of CIA operatives just to protect some money. I wonder what happened. Let's continue watching.
expose precious informants. But time moved on. 3 long years pass after Reedy was fired, and it's not until informants in China start disappearing one by one that panic sets in. The CIA is in chaos. The panic triggers the creation of a joint CIA-FBI task force, codenamed Operation Honeybadger. These guys had to find the leak and stop it. But as Operation Honeybadger starts investigating, the dodgy chat websites are not their focus. Rather, another possible explanation appears. A mole. Someone who has been inside the CIA. And as the mole team starts to build a profile, one name keeps coming up. Jerry Chun-Shing Lee. On paper, he ticks every box. Jerry Chun-Shin Lee was born in Hong Kong, raised in Hawaii, and he was an army veteran who was also fluent in Mandarin. He joined the CIA in 1994, and he handled sensitive operations in Beijing and Tokyo. He ran covert assets. But by 2007, something broke. Lee's career had stalled, and he leaves the CIA. He quits, disgruntled, then moves back to Hong Kong. But the CIA took notice. An ex-agent who had a top secret clearance, he had really sensitive information about Chinese spies, and now he's left, disgruntled, and he's moved to a Chinese-occupied territory. It's not a crime, but it is.
I can see why he had to apologize for that comment. Chinese occupied territory.
So the CIA did something bold, deceptive, and kind of brilliant. They set a trap. They create a fake job opportunity with a big salary and reach out to Lee. But there's a catch. To get the role, he had to attend an interview on US soil. Lee takes the bait. August 2012, Honolulu, Hawaii. Jerry Lee lands, checks into a hotel, and everything seems normal. Except it isn't. The FBI is already there. Operation Honeybadger is waiting, watching. As soon as Lee leaves the hotel room for the day, agents move in with a court-authorized warrant. They searched everything, and they hit the jackpot. Hidden in his luggage are two small black notebooks, not too dissimilar from what I'm holding here. The first one was a 41-page date book. The second one, a 21-page address book. Both have handwritten notes, detailed handwritten notes, put in there by Lee, and both are deeply damning. Inside, there were true names of CIA assets with phone numbers, operational meeting locations.
That's the crazy part. So I guess you can't, if you're a CIA, can you really have people quit? Because they just know so much that this is always going to be an issue.
And details about covert facilities. A gold mine for foreign intelligence. But that wasn't all. Agents...
Oh, you know, we need to have a CIA officer come on, explain all these questions. That would be interesting.
Also find a thumb drive, a USB. Forensics dig into it, and buried deep there is a deleted document which had a breakdown of CIA officers, mission timelines, and sensitive ops. This was top secret stuff. The FBI photographs everything, and then they vanish before Lee even returns. He doesn't know it yet, but he's in trouble. But capturing a traitor wasn't the end of the story. It was just one piece of a complicated puzzle. A puzzle that John Reedy had tried to partly solve years earlier, but that no one wanted to hear. 1 year after evidence was found in Jerry Lee's hotel room, Operation Honeybadger made another shocking discovery. The CIA was still using those dodgy chat websites to communicate with informants, but they had spread to China. It's suspected that Iran communicated with China, showing them how to find these websites. Once China had access to the websites, they could track Chinese informants and then hunt them down with deadly precision. The ticking time bomb had exploded, and the CIA had paid the worst price possible. Finally, 7 years after Reedy first noticed it, they scrambled to shut these websites down. But there's something I didn't tell you. Not all of these 20 informants in China used these websites to communicate back with the CIA. Top-tier informants had other, more secure ways of communicating back with the CIA. So could it have been a mole that gave these people away? Well, that's where we come back to Jerry Lee. By 2013, the US government had the pieces, the notebooks, the thumb drive, but in espionage, evidence isn't everything. They still couldn't prove Lee had given it all to China. They needed him to confess it. And Jerry Lee was no amateur. He was trained by the CIA, so he knew how to lie, how to evade, how to stay silent. Through 4 rounds of questioning, he held the line. But on the 5th, he cracked. Lee confessed to receiving taskings and direct orders from Chinese intelligence officers. He admitted that he created the classified...
Wait, hold on. An ex-CIA officer pleads guilty Wednesday to conspiracy. Admitted as a plea bargain, received regular tasking from his Chinese handlers in 2010 and 11. So this was 3-4 years after he quit, which I guess makes sense because the US probably is doing this too, right? If you worked for a foreign agency and you left the job, US CIA agents are probably trying to see if you're interested in sharing some secrets. So Chinese people are interested in finding this out too. This is where it's like, if you're a CIA agent and you leave CIA, do you put that on your resume where I used to work on CIA? Because that's such an easy way to find out who's leaving. You don't even need like a governmental leak. You can just go through everyone's resume on Indeed or whatever the website is and just scan for the keyword CIA.
Document found on his drive. On May 1st, 2019, Jerry Chun-Shing Lee pleaded guilty to conspiracy to deliver national defense information to a foreign government. He knew exactly what he was doing.
A CIA case agent was sentenced to 19 years, received more than $800,000. This is where it's like, I know I'm gonna get some comments, but this is insane because recently we made a video on a CIA spy or a US Army officer which is like a sad thing to say, but he was spying for the Chinese while he was actively working for the US Army. And he was doing it for $50,000. Like, I get it's a lot of money, but it's not that much money to betray your country. Like, even $800,000, it's not that much money. Like, it is a lot, but it's also like not that much to do something like that shocking. This is where it's insane.
And on November 22nd in the same year, he was sentenced to 19 years in federal prison.
So, you know what I don't get? If they couldn't if they couldn't convict him without his confession, why did he confess? I guess that's an interesting question. Okay, so I researched more about the case and I got more information. So there was enough circumstantial evidence for him to not risk a jury trial. They found a lot of unexplained cash. Of course, we already talked about the notebook and the thumb drive. And on top of that, the travel records, and he had a lot of logs of a lot of communication he was having with his handlers. So it was more than enough. It was probably going to be still like a risky case to go to jury with, but he wasn't willing to take a deal. And on top of that, the government wasn't willing to take a deal because he does know a lot of stuff about the CIA that you don't want in an open court. So they offered him a deal and he took the deal, and that's why he pleaded guilty. That makes sense.
In the end, Operation Honeybadger did catch the mole, and they also discovered the communications hack that led to these informants being caught. So you might say, job well done, right? Well, whilst Jerry Lee's name was splashed across news headlines, there really wasn't a lot of publicity about the failure in these communication systems. No one was held accountable for the dodgy implementation, leaving literal...
So I looked up which company he worked for, John Reed, and I don't want to say this wrong because I know there's a lot of money at stake and we could get sued, but who did he work for? He worked for SAIC and Raytheon. Raytheon, I know, is a big company, big contractor for the government, so maybe someone should have been held accountable.
Password in the source code. No one was held accountable for leaving these sites live and letting them spread to areas where they shouldn't ever have been used. And definitely no one was held accountable for ignoring the whistleblower, John Reedy, and ultimately firing him and kicking him out of the agency. But accountability in espionage is complicated. Intelligence agencies like the CIA prefer to remain in the shadows and operate in secret for fear of leaking unnecessary information to their enemies. That information then could be used against them. Yet secrecy comes at a price. We may never know the names of these 20 informants in China that risked their lives to bring back information to the US. And some of them actually paid the ultimate price with their life to do that. Their sacrifice remains hidden, their names unknown. Should the CIA have held people accountable for these failures? Or is secrecy just the cost of doing business? I'd love to know your thoughts, so let me know in the comments below. Speaking of accountability, Israel's spy agency Mossad was never held accountable for the shocking crime they committed in Dubai in 2010. If you're interested in that story, you should watch my video on it.